All right, well, everybody, welcome to the Alchemy Solutions Summit here, delivering the modern workspace. We're getting ready to tee up here Blake Chandler, who's the Director of Sales Engineering at Citrix. He's going to be talking. He's got a great presentation today on Citrix Workspace and how about brokering that access into the modern workspaces here. So, Blake, want to introduce you. Looking forward for a great presentation. All yours, sir.
So first off, mic check. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, loud and clear.
So I've got two screens set up. I promise I will look at the camera here momentarily. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. We practiced this earlier. We had a couple of issues. So fortunately, I have rebooted 3 times, which we know is the universal fix for all things. So let me just share my screen here, and it should come up. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and put on my Alchemy hat. So I'm getting the Alchemy mood here. So Jarrell, great job kicking off. I wrote down some notes here. You got some universal truths, as I like to call them. So safe, transitioning to SaaS, transformation, experience, agility, kids in the background, all the changes that we're dealing with right now. Paul, great job. I can tell you're technical. You brought up pixie boots, which was pretty cool, and hadn't heard that word in quite a while. You had the kids in the background. I like the quote that you said, or the comment that you said, easier with tech. And I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. And you had me completely with the Citrix demo and then kind of off the rails when you transitioned to some of the other vendors, which I will not mention them by name. So thank you all for the time today. I really wish I was there in person to do this presentation. I definitely miss the human interaction that we get. Even the verbal response, when you're at a conference and they say, hey, good morning, and then nobody says good morning, they say good morning again. Not that I necessarily like that exercise, but I guess part of me does miss that. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to attempt some demos. That was actually my quote earlier about falling on the sword. So if it works, great. If not, we'll be able to transition pretty quickly. But I'm going to get into the presentation. But first, before I do that, I was looking at this slide, getting ready for the presentation. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why there are so many cups on this table. I think it's a good staging. It looks great. But there's definitely some things that maybe just from a photographer's eye are just a little off. So the first slide that I have here is a history of Citrix. And I almost didn't put this in because I have a tendency to kind of go off the rails, which I kind of am already doing. But when we talk about the history of Citrix starting in 1991, very strategic. We actually had the source code for Microsoft, which we still do, which is part of the real tight integration that we have with them now. But very strategic, remote access, 1991. Fun fact, Citrix actually was founded in Richardson, Texas, and then moved to Florida. It was actually called Citrus, but the Florida Orange Growers Association did not like that. And then 2006, with the just explosion of application virtualization and the acquisition of NetScalers, which I love statistics because if I tell you a stat, you know it's true. But 75% of all internet traffic still traverses through Citrix at some point with our networking appliances. The explosion of VDI in 2010 actually started in 2011. So just kind of on the cusp of that. Then you have mobility and cloud services in 2013. Actually, mobility was a little bit before that with the advent and the rollout of the iPhone. It was one of the first things that Citrix was deploying on. As a matter of fact, it's one of the major deployments that we had in its infancy with mobile app management on iPhones a little bit before 2013. And then just the evolution into 2017 with our workspace and all the enhancements there. And then last year in 2019, pulling in some AI and machine learning and building this workspace intelligence that really feeds off of this consumer experience, which I'll touch on here in just a little bit. Each one of these branches, they can go off for an hour a piece in each one of the conversations. But I think it's really important just to note that there's 30 years of innovation that have been built all around this user experience, which we talked a little bit about and some of the key initiatives that Alchemy has. All right, so 2020. This is an opportunity for me to use one of my favorite dad jokes right now, and that's hindsight's 2020. I was talking to an SE last night, and there's one word for 2020 for me right now. It's just weird. It's just been a weird year. And starting in 2020, we had set out these initiatives, and these are initiatives that we're talking to customers. It's all about this transformation, going from on-prem, moving into a more hybrid cloud approach, really getting into the benefits of cloud agility and virtualization and working anywhere, taking advantage of the modernization of applications outside of these monolithic enterprise apps. And this transition is something that's been building over the past couple of years, and then it just exploded this year. Some companies that I thought were transformed to the nth degree, they really weren't. And I'll give you an example, not necessarily related to Citrix, but my daughter attended Camp Longhorn outside of Austin, and we stayed in a hotel, which beat the 4-hour drive to pick her up at 8 in the morning. In the past, when I traveled for work, I would carry my phone and would try to use the mobile check-in for a hotel. It never worked. But now, thanks to COVID and the requirements, the hotels accelerated. That mobile pass worked flawlessly. So there was an opportunity to accelerate that transformation, and that's really what we've been seeing. Taking a step back into some of the changes, there's no doubt about the impact that COVID and this year has had on everything part of life. So I don't know about you all, but my workout patterns have definitely changed. I haven't been to a gym. I've been relying on all body weight exercises. Probably benefit from having what looks to be a 12, 15-pound baby. So everything has changed a little bit. And that includes the strategies that we had or have been trying to address. And the new normal, which is something that I'm not a fan of new normal, because I feel like it's like a daily change is what's happening. But if you look at the specific phases that we went through, and I think everybody can relate to Jarrell's points earlier, we had this crisis phase, which is what are we going to do? And I was actually, meeting with customers in mid-March, and it was like a bunch of false starts. Do we shut down? Do we come back? Are we going to move our offices? What are we going to do? And what I would say, kind of to Paul's point, companies that had embraced and had adopted flexible and agile technology, they kind of hit it in stride. We have a public-facing reference with Leeds College that was able to take 7,000 workers and make them remote over weekend. And that's a really powerful comment and statement and reference. And so transitioning to work from home, how do we keep the lights on? And then we saw, all right, we did something. Additional security risk, how do we manage what we deployed out there? One of the solutions was VPN, and VPN, what I like to say is kind of like the Spice Girls, is pretty popular in the 90s, but maybe not so much now. How do we get more scalable? How do we provide some analytics? We see this increase in productivity because people aren't commuting. We've seen a reduction in real estate, but how do we really optimize and continue to optimize that performance? And the reality is that things are going to change going forward. We're going to be reimagined for this long-term strategy. Employee experience and secure employee experience is going to be an absolute necessity. And then one of the questions I like to ask customers is, how are you using cloud to help grow your business? And this cloud transition, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, is something that's definitely going to be accelerated. And we're already seeing that in conversations as we start to plan for the end of this year, and then the reality that we have going into 2021. So I mentioned earlier, I don't like the new normal, so I'm going to call it the new normal, and that's just what I'm going to roll with here. But if you look at work from home, work anywhere, any device, and then ultimately having this bubble that secures you or protects you from yourself, this is going to be the nature of the beast moving forward. And I think it's interesting. So this is actually a marketing advertisement from 2011, and it's all about simplicity to work from anywhere at any time. This was something that you probably saw in airports and part of our marketing events that we had at the time. And it was really about this employee flexibility. And this is 2011, and fast forward to where we're at in 2020. The technology has just done nothing but expand and blow up, really. So 2011 was the vision, and it came to fruition thanks to the real world example that we had here from a work from home global in 2020. So looking at what I like to call the DNA of most companies, and working for a large company prior to Citrix, I fully understand that there's a lot of solutions that you have inside of your environment. Some of these are point solutions. Some of them were brought in for a specific project. The ultimate thing here is there's a lot of complexity because there's a lot of tools that have been brought in over a period of time. And what we saw initially from companies is, how do we take what we currently have on the shelf and make something work? And the ultimate result of this was an experience that was provided to the end user that, can it work? Yeah, but you got to kind of know how to navigate. And the sensitivity to Jarrell's points earlier about when things change in an environment, it can add a little bit of confusion to the end users. And it's just not seamless. And at the end of the day, it's not a very productive experience. This is really where I see the value of the overall Citrix stack. And so if you look at each one of these technology stacks that are here, Citrix has a component that fits into each one of these. Can you make these independent components work with others? Sure. You could take BlackBerry, which I hope you're not on BlackBerry, but if you like BlackBerry, that's good. But BlackBerry, working with something like Box, and then even having something like F5, and then on the back end, the employee experience with something like Slack. Each one of those components can kind of work, but they're not going to be able to bolt on together. Another thing that's important to note, if you look at each one of these technology stacks and that dotted line that's in between each one of these, that segmentation leads to complexity, time, and risk. And so by eliminating that, you're able to be more agile to meet the demands of this ever-changing world. So I typically don't like to read slides, but I think this one kind of sums it all up. Workspace, everything you need to be productive in one experience. And essentially, it's all about whatever device you have, going into a common interface that helps organize all of your stuff. Now, not just for a user experience perspective, but also from the administrator perspective. It could be that you are delivering a mix of SaaS apps. And to Paul's point earlier, you might have on-prem or cloud resources that you're looking to deliver, or different content collaborations, on-prem data centers, so on and so forth. So end user needs a seamless, organized place that they can land and get their work done. And as an organization, you need the flexibility to deliver. There's also, breaking it down just a little bit for the technology stack. The challenge that I'm going to give everybody on the call right now is just imagine removing one of these stacks from your delivery. So if you're looking to deliver a unified workspace and you're not delivering content collaboration, or you're not delivering apps and desktops, then it's not complete. Something's missing. Same thing on the admin side. If you're delivering all this, but it's not secure and it's not providing you visibility, and it's not consistent, then there's a gap there. And so looking at the workspace, that one consumer-like experience, which the consumer experience is driving a lot of our decisions across everything that we do. Single sign-on, being able to log in once and get to everything, just removing the frictionless access, contextual security. And I'll delve into that just a little bit. And then universal visibility from a management. So now that we've delivered something out there, how are we continuing to optimize, and how are we continuing to secure it? The other thing that's important to note, that when you have security and you have user experience, it used to be that they would have this tug and war. The expectation now is that security's here and user experience, and they're seamless. There's no impact because you are enforcing security. So just kind of high level top benefits here. Again, kind of reading from the slide, unified access, employee experience. If you have better experience and better access, better collaboration, and then flexibility and security from a delivery. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to attempt to do a demo where I'm going to go straight up like this. I'm going to spin around a little bit, and it's going to work seamlessly. So let's give this a shot. All right. So this is Demo US. This is actually the exact same environment that Paul was demoing earlier. My production environment is very similar to this as well. But the reason I cannot show my production environment is because we have something called access control on. And what access control does is it actually prevents the ability for me to share my screen and show you any of my applications. So I'm not able to share. So a little bit of security that's built into my production environment, but very similar experience here. And I just want to bounce around and kind of show you what's going on. So from the home screen, organizing, guiding, and automating, the first thing you're going to see is my activity feed. And this activity feed is the most relevant, pertinent thing that I need to get done for the day. So using my imagination a little bit, I could be a new employee, and this could be you need to fill out your W-2, or it could be I need a survey that's completed. This is something that's pushed down. This is top of the list activities. The actions here, I'll cover this in a second because I think it's really important. And then just that consumerization field, the recent, what have I done recently? My recent apps, my recent desktops, and then my recent files. So looking at the actions, I'm gonna dig in and just tell a quick story on, we'll pick on Workday. So Workday, for those of you who don't know, is an HR management system, and it's really, really robust. So for me to be able to request PTO, I would have to log in to Workday, multi-factor auth, get in the Workday, navigate around, find my profile, find my calendar, request PTO. It's like a 10-step process, maybe a minute and a half. What we're able to do is abstract, or I guess remove all of those tasks and steps that are needed. And as I do this, my screen is actually freezing, so perfect timing. Let's give this one more shot. All right, a little bit of a delay here, which I think is exactly what Paul was saying. But what you can see is that the micro app is actually pulling up. And what this is doing is it's taking a sub-segment of that huge monolithic application and presenting me exactly what the direction that I need. The analogy that we use here is it's like a printer with like 1,000 buttons on there, and all you want to do is press print. So now I can go in and I can choose my time off. I can put it in here. and the quantity that I want, and then submit, and I'm good to go. All right, so on the app side of the house, the one thing that I wanted to point out here is just kind of navigate through the different types of apps and what we're seeing and what is delivered. So from a user perspective, on the app side, we're really familiar with icons, and I know where to go based off of what Google Chrome looks like. I know where to go based off of Facebook or Outlook, so on and so forth. As an administrator, there could be additional security requirements that you want to build in on some of these applications. So for example, this e-drawings could be something that's running in a data center. It's delivered virtually. Facebook, you can say, you know what, I want to allow the company to have free access to Facebook. It's just going to open up in an embedded browser. Conversely, you could have something like Salesforce or even Workday that you want to run in a container that has things like watermarking, preventing the ability to print, and all that stuff. So single sign-on into all of these, and then you're good to go. Desktops, very similar in that you can deliver with multiple options. So I can have a desktop that is running in your cloud of choice, a Linux desktop, or an on-prem desktop. That on-prem desktop could be something that's sitting in a cubicle, could be sitting in a data center. And to Paul's point earlier, not all desktops are created equally. A call center user doesn't need the same desktop as a developer, but you have the flexibility to deliver based off of that user's persona. And then the last point that I wanted to bring up around making it easier to consume, and that's going to be the file aggregation. So when I talked about those point-to-point solutions, something as simple as where did I put that file? Was it in Dropbox? Did I have it in Content Collaboration? Did I have it in OneDrive? Chances are you're using a little bit of both. I am not. I'm specifically just using what we have provided here inside the Workspace with the Citrix services, which is going to be my Content Collaboration. But I am able to pull all of these files based off of where they're at, and it really helps me streamline and find stuff. And when we go back to the home screen, and we look at the favorites, and again, it's a demo environment, but it doesn't matter where those files were, my recent files would pop up. So it really bubbles up the most important things or things I was working on most recently. So that's the Workspace. Let's get back into the presentation here. The next thing I'm going to cover is the Citrix Cloud. This is the administrative side of the house. And when we think back to that slide that it showed all the technology stacks and all the individual players that were in there, this is our cloud service offering. So as you want to expand or roll out completely, it's simply adding and managing these services from one location. Now, the benefit there, if you've been a Citrix admin, I think I heard in the conversation prior, all the way back to 1.8. Traditionally, what would happen is you install a component or technology stack that was all on-prem. You would have a management console, then you would have multiple product consoles to manage that. The end user experience was still the same, but all this management was taking place on the back end. The ton of downsides there. There used to be console wars. I think Jarian's coming on later. I'm sure he can probably comment on this, but there used to be, well, you have 17 consoles and I have 15 consoles to manage your environment. By moving to Citrix Cloud, what we're able to do is we're able to take that management infrastructure. It's all supported by us. If you've kept up with Citrix recently, we do a current release very periodically. I think we're up to 10 over the past 2 years. That's all managed and kept updated by Citrix. So all the new innovation and technology is being rolled into that 30-year window. Is all moving to the cloud. And then we consolidate the consoles. So you're doing your administration from one single location. And then the plus side, where we saw a lot of the advantages as we got into this business continuity planning, was the infrastructure on the back end is completely flexible. So whether you're running on Nutanix or whether you're running in AWS or Azure, it doesn't matter. That anyiness and that ability to manage and build up and burst your resources is going to be something that's extremely flexible. It's very simple to configure as far as getting that hooked up into our Citrix Cloud. A couple of things I do want to point out is we've made some really huge announcements, I believe to the tune of $1 billion in research and development with Microsoft and Google recently stepping in. So this cloud war, if you will, because the market and where we're at right now is accelerated. Citrix is right in the forefront with those two cloud providers, as well as AWS. There's also some niche players that are out there like Oracle and SoftLayer and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to get into a cloud demo as we let this cloud GIF kind of move a little bit. So, all right. So this is my cloud console. This is part of my SE sandbox. The one thing I'm not showing on any of this is the login process. So the login here would be my credentials plus Citrix actually has a one-time password token that will give you that two-factor authentication into your cloud. This is something that was enforced at the end of July or beginning of July, I believe. But you can see here at each one of my services. So assume that I'm just delivering virtual apps and desktops, and I have a subsegment of users I'm delivering it to. It's perfectly fine. But I have another set of users that wants to come in and maybe utilize our access gateway functionality or some of the access control, which I'll talk about here in a moment. I can configure all of that from this console. If I want to go in and do a manage of my environment, it's as simple as going and clicking on the manage button here. It'll actually open up in a separate window, and I'm able to manage my environment from one single location as opposed to having to log in. And I remember back in the day having to know what the IP address was and then having to remember what your individual admin credentials were. So being able to utilize the service to manage your environment, to configure your environment, and to adjust your environment to the end user is really, really powerful. All right, so back into the presentation. The next thing I'm going to get into, so we talked about user experience and we talked about the administrative side of the house. The next thing is really expanding on the notion of being frictionless. And that's what we're seeing being extremely important. I don't think I need to delve too far into the single sign-on story. We all know that signing into anything when you don't know your password is a pain. The other aspect is from a corporation, as we start to shift these legacy applications to SaaS apps, how do we control these? You know, in the infancy of SaaS, there was no control. So if your company utilized something like Salesforce or 15.5, a lot of shadow IT came into play. There was no control over it. Anybody can log in it. They leave the company. They could potentially still have access to some of your information. So we needed a way to provide a single sign-on solution as well as control who has rights to access this. So if they leave the company, we can deboard. Expanding on that single sign-on with our access control solutions, we also do web filtering. We'll do proxy of sessions and then SaaS control. The beauty here, again, is that it's as a service. So we can spin it up and spin it down as needed. And then on the back end, just providing that security that expands just a little bit. And I'll kind of talk about what that experience looks like. This is ultimately about guiding the user through the internet, which I wanted to have a stat here about the amount of data exfiltration or the hacking that happens on the browser. I believe it's like 80%. That's even internal. It used to be that internal was the most safe place to be. So there's the need and necessity to really guide your users through the internet. And the beauty of access control is that we can do just that. So if you remember back to that Workspace page that I had opened earlier and I had the different apps, it could be that your stance as a company is you want to publish Firefox and you don't want to put any restrictions on it whatsoever. User clicks on Firefox, it opens up locally, they're good to go. They're presented to this from their Workspace screen. So to Paul's point earlier, that iGel, they log in initially, they get their Workspace, they're good to go. But let's say, for example, you have a SaaS app that you want additional security on, and that's going to be in the middle here with Workday. So Workday would come up, it would have a watermark that's on there that lets you know that it's being secure, prevents from screen scraping. There would be prevention based off the network that you're coming in for things like print, the ability to copy and paste. And then inside of that SaaS app, we can actually control whether or not you can go outside to the internet, or we can block based off URLs. So really just like a super robust way to kiosk your SaaS apps and protect the user and protect your data and your intellectual property. The last feature that's here is the secure browser service. And the secure browser service basically says, and I'll give you an example of Gmail. Let's say, for example, your company wants your employees to access Gmail, but you want no part of it on that device and you want no part of it running on your network. What we can do is we can publish that Gmail icon. When the user clicks on it, it's actually going to run or spin up a virtual machine that Gmail will run in. User persona would pass through. They're logged into Gmail. They're able to work. And as soon as they log off that session, that virtual machine is going to burn itself down. So it's going to completely wipe everything. The best analogy I've heard there is it's like a doctor. It takes off their gloves at the end and it throws it away. So that's our secure browser service. All right, so now I'm going to shift this a little bit. So we talked about user experience, we talked about admin experience, and we talked about controlling the applications that we're delivering. The next is, since we have the technology stack across the board, we can actually provide deep analytics and insights. And this is something that I am really excited about because the technology has been evolved for the past 30 years, and it's at a spot now to where there's a lot that we're building in with machine learning and AI, so we can gather intellectually without a lot of admin overhead. What devices are coming in? Where are they coming from? What location? What files are they accessing? And then based off of the behaviors, what's the risk? What's the device risk? Is it jailbroken? Are they on a new network? And then combining that information and then enforcing action. So we can decide whether or not to allow access. We can start to reduce based off of the increase in risk factors that are happening. We can redirect to a secure browser. We can block content. We can alert the admins. So really just a rich way to assess and then enforce an action, which is pretty unique to the product lines. So the two main analytics portions that we have here, the first one is going to be around security analytics. And I'll just paint these points out real quick. So the first is around user behavior. So the ability to proactively monitor a user's behavior. I think back to the credit card usage or debit card. 10 years ago, you would go to Phoenix, no issue whatsoever. You would drive. Now, when you drive, you get a notification, and even more so on your phone, you can say, hey, I'm going to be traveling. And so knowing that user behavior directly correlates to what we do on a daily basis, and then tracking and modeling that user behavior so we can start to identify the anomalies, and then when an anomaly is present, identify an aggregated trigger that's associated with it, and doing this over a historical period of time. Same thing for applications. So really protecting the applications from external attacks, infiltration, looking to track access and then rank applications based off their risk. Have they been performing a risky behavior? And then recommending mitigation steps. And then data security, again, looking at that technology stack, were you to remove that data portion of it, you really need the ability to look at the amount of data that is being uploaded and downloaded and whether or not sensitive data has been accessed. On the performance side of the house, really building out into some requests that admins have had for a period of time. It's just really getting a deeper picture into what the application and infrastructure is actually doing. So tracking application usage, tracking application performance across those applications, and looking at the resource locations that are delivering, where are we running into issues. On the performance analytics side, monitoring that end-to-end performance and really highlighting what that root cause and providing recommendations and suggestions based on what we're seeing. And I'll do a demo of this here momentarily. And then the last one, there's this monitoring end-to-end application performance. All right, so let's get into a demo of the analytics feature. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my Citrix Cloud. I've already gone ahead and opened up my analytics console. But if I were to go back into Citrix Cloud, you would see that there's a analytics tab. If my back button works, there we go. So one of the services here is going to be analytics. I simply just click on Manage Analytics, and it will open up the screen. So a little bit of delay here. I've got some processor issues. And Jason, I see your camera's still on. I just noticed that. Are you wanting to comment on something?
Yeah. So I mean, we've got a few minutes left here. We'll want to make sure that we've got a poll we want to do, get some time for a quick Q&A, and then we'll have the raffle.
I'll tell you what, man, I will wrap this bad boy up in about 2 minutes. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Cool. All right. So in Citrix Cloud, you'll see my analytics. I simply go in here to manage. I'll bounce through this really quickly because I know that in the essence of time here. So the first one we're going to look at is security analytics. Now, what's important to note here, in security analytics, the higher the score, the worse. So I'm going to pick on what is the most exaggerated security issue of all time, which is Georgina here. And if I look at Georgina, there's a lot of stuff that's going on here. Unmanaged device, I'm seeing excessive screen captures, EPA file scans. And now we decided to start session recording. What would probably happen here is you would lock her out, no more access, and we would figure out what's going on here. But if I look at the potential data exfiltration and I click on this, you can kind of see where some of the usage is. I can look at the user info, get some additional information. The first thing that's going to pop out on this user information tab is that Georgina's all over the place with her applications. She's got 31 devices, which we all know Gartner says it's 6.2. And then the locations, if I look at the map here, I can see that Georgina is technically or typically in Australia, but all over the place. So this is an extreme example of a security risk here. There's some better examples in here that show how a sophisticated hacker internally would try to access the environment. And then last but not least, just clicking a little bit on the performance analytics side of the house. What I want to highlight here is getting a quick assessment of what that user experience is. So the poor users are the ones that are traditionally going to be the first ones to call in. I can get an assessment on what those poor users are doing. Session login time, is it GPO policy that's being applied? This traverses across both the on-prem and the cloud environments. What we're seeing as customers start rolling and getting into the cloud, the user experience that they're seeing in the cloud is actually running much better, and it's easy to prove that cloud conversation. So that's the time as this comes up. What this is going to show you basically is just the authentication or the login time. If I were to dig into this a little bit, it would say the profile is over 200 meg, and that's what's slowing it down. So wrapping up here, as we return back to what is the new normal, which I absolutely love having kids bounce into the background because it returns me to just a little bit of the humanity that's out there. Leaving you with the two sides of the house here from an employee experience, really improving that experience, being flexible, increasing collaboration, increasing productivity as we work from home and work from home longer, speeding up the onboarding, making that easier. And then the content or the control and security, visibility, contextual access security policies, all about agility and flexibility that we have on the back end. So with that, return to the original slide that we had here. That is Citrix. This is where we're at. Appreciate the time today. Thank you so much. We got a poll that's up, and Jason, we got some time for a couple of questions.
Yeah, we got just got a couple quick questions here while folks are going ahead and answering the poll here. So one of the questions that came in, are there any plans to support PBS on Hyper-V without system setup being required? Is there, I mean, I don't know what the roadmap for PBS is, but somebody wondered if there's a solution coming for that.
Man, we're going deep into the tech questions here. A little PBS on Hyper-V. I tell you what, I don't know the immediate answer to that. What I can tell you is that PBS is a great solution for a lot of companies in the cloud, primarily looking to move towards machine creation services. But I can definitely find an answer to that. If you want to send me the contact information, I'll make sure that we do that. Absolutely.
And then, yeah, so we've got one more question here that we're going to throw at you. One of the question was, does it require any type of agent to run the SaaS app security?
Yeah, so great question. One of the things I didn't elaborate on too much. So when you look at the access points that you can have, you can connect via browser. So if you're remote somewhere, just go to your browser page for your company or corporation. In order for the access control to be enforced, I actually have the Workspace app, which used to be Receiver, which everybody probably knows that's on the call. So Workspace app being installed is what's going to be able to provide the configuration or the access control that's on there. So I typically log in the morning, Workspace app automatically launches, I log in, and that's why I wasn't able to show my production environment, because the access control was enabled.
Your screen sharing has been disconnected.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to take that as my walk-off music.
That is perfect, Blake. Well, thank you very much, sir. We really do appreciate you. Thank you for the time. That was a great presentation.